Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Welcome to Live at 5. We begin in the White House tonight, where U.S. President Donald Trump says tariffs on Canada and Mexico are still set to go ahead early next month.
And President Trump initially agreed to pause the 25% tariffs for more than 30 days after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau agreed to ramp up border security and hire a so-called fentanyl czar. Tariffs could come into effect March 4th.
And joining us now for some analysis to this breaking news from south of the border is CTV's political analyst, Eric Ham. Eric, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you. So here we are. Canada beefed up its borders. It appointed a special fentanyl czar, yet we are still being told to prepare for these tariffs. Does this surprise you?
No, not at all. In fact, if you heard Donald Trump speak at the annual confab of the Conservative Political Action Committee this past weekend here in suburban Washington, D.C., he made clear his feelings about Canada, saying that he's not very happy with Canada, and he believes that Canada is giving the United States a raw deal on the issue of trade. And this is something that he has always believed, even though we know it's not true. But clearly what we're seeing from Donald Trump right now is that this is deeply personal for him, and he's believing that he can actually inflict a tremendous amount of pain and consternation on Canada, with irrespective of what it's also going to do to the United States. And I don't think that's the key component that Donald Trump is really expecting, is not only the tremendous blowback politically, but what it's going to do for the economy when and if these tariffs should, in fact, go into effect.
Okay, well, Eric, it's not just Mexico and Canada. Trump's imposing tariffs on countries all over the world, which could trigger ripple effects on the global economy. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what we're seeing from Donald Trump right now, this is Donald Trump versus the world. Not only has he already implemented a massive whopping tariffs on aluminum and steel, and we have to remember the United States is the largest importer of aluminum and steel of any country in the world. And so, again, this is literally cutting your nose to spite your face, but Donald Trump has done it anyway. So not only is that going to take a tremendous toll on big manufacturing companies like the automakers, but it's also going to have a ripple effect as well. In fact, we're already beginning to see some levels of slowing in the economy, particularly when you look at the jobs reports that we got in January. In addition to that, what we're seeing is the reciprocal tariffs that Donald Trump has already implemented, but yet and still, the tariffs that Donald Trump has already implemented on China, we've already seen some easing of those tariffs, and those tariffs were not even in effect for a month. So clearly what we're seeing here is Donald Trump is using misinformation, disinformation to affect policy, but clearly it's already beginning to have a tremendous blowback. To say nothing of what it's doing for him politically, already his approval numbers are underwater, and Donald Trump is only a month into his 100-day honeymoon.
Eric, you're in Washington. Do the American people understand how this might hurt them too?
I don't believe that they do at this point, but I do believe that when these tariffs go into effect, as Donald Trump says that they will, beginning early March, that is when the economy is going to really begin to feel the full effect of these tariffs. And already we know that a number of countries, including Canada, are already prepared to retaliate if, in fact, these tariffs go into effect. And so I think that's when the American consumer is going to begin to complain about high prices beyond just eggs. And of course, we already know that one of the ways that Donald Trump measures his success as a president is based on what the stock market does. And we know that the market could potentially crater. That could actually give Donald Trump some pause. Fingers crossed.
Okay, so Eric, what happened to all of the talk from Trump where he says, if you do this, then this?
Well, I think for Canada, that was never, ever going to hold because, again, Donald Trump, when it comes to countries like Canada, Greenland, and other places, there's this expansionism that Donald Trump believes that he can actually impose on many of these nations. And he's using this President McKinley example where he believes tariffs will generate enormous revenue. And then also the United States can also expand its territory out of that. And I believe that Donald Trump believes he can do that very much in the same manner that President McKinley did. Of course, it didn't exactly happen that way. But again, when has Donald Trump ever used the truth as a barometer in terms of what will guide him, particularly as it relates to policy?
And when has Donald Trump ever been predictable? CTV's political analyst, Eric Ham, joining us live tonight. Thanks for this, Eric. Well, here at home, as Doug Ford continues to make his case for this election, linking it to these threats of tariffs, the other main party leaders, they continue to stump for votes in the lead up to Election Day.
CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us live with the latest. Melissa.
Hey, Lena and Bakari. Yeah, so sticking with those tariffs, Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives out with their platform today. It includes a $5 billion Protect Ontario account. It's to help respond to those American tariffs that are now looking more and more likely. Other promises also include a $705 million plan to expand STEM and skilled trades training, $50 million to support modular housing technology, and also a talker to a bit of a goodie, a proposal to get rid of the minimum retail price for liquor. Now, the Conservative platform doesn't include a full costing for all of these promises. It also doesn't even include a cost estimate for some of them, like Ford's plan to build a tunnel under Highway 401. Ford making stops in places like Toronto, in Mississauga, in Brampton today. We also heard from NDP leader Marit Stiles. She was out stumping in southwestern Ontario, making stops in places like Windsor, Sarnia, and London. She was taking jabs at the Liberals today. But at the same time, we heard from Ontario Liberal Party leader Bonnie Crombie, who was looking to attract people to her party, saying people who haven't voted Liberal before, she's drawing them in. She says now is an alternative time to reach out to her party for an alternative to those PCs. And we heard from Green Party leader Mike Schreiner today. He was campaigning in Bracebridge, making a pitch to rural voters there. The crunch really is on right now, Lita and Bakari. About 3 days left. Thursday is Election Day. So it's really going to be interesting to see where we see these four main party candidates take their campaign over the next few days, looking for those undecided voters, if there are any of those that happen to be left right now, as we look forward to this snap election, now very close. Going to throw it back to you.
Okay, CP24's Melissa Duggan joining us live from the newsroom, and we will have complete coverage on election night with you.
Sure will, and we're going to have a special show for you. For now, we're going to get a check on traffic. Let's send things over to our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Siayabwa. 507, 6 degrees out there, and I'm sure it's really busy. Adjoa.
Yeah, very, very busy, Lena, Bakari, and watching problems impact the drive if you're on the northbound lanes of the 410. These issues happening at Courtney Park. It's a multi-vehicle collision northbound 410 through Courtney Park. At this point, it's the two right lanes that are occupied. Transport truck involved, a FedEx truck, and then a couple of sedans in the mix as well. So it's making for a little bit of a slower than normal drive right on off the 401 up towards those problems if you're headed on the 410 northbound. And then on to the eastbound lanes of the 401. This is the end of the on-ramp from Dixon Martin Grove. Just a stall, but it's creating a bit of a bottleneck as drivers try to get on that on-ramp and then merge onto the 401 if you're traveling east. Further east on the 401, we had some problems at the end of the on-ramp from McCowan. That did all clear. And if you're headed towards the Don Valley Parkway, pretty busy from north of Bayview Bloor. Continues slow as you navigate all the way up towards the 401. Outside of camera view for travel, take you to Burlington. We're dealing with a rollover, upper middle blocked near Guelph Line. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, thank you for this, Adjoa. Well, the TTC board has now passed a motion to improve the transit agency's response to major snow incidents. This comes after back-to-back winter storms.
CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us live from City Hall with the latest. Beatrice.
Bakari, Lena, there's no question the city was almost paralyzed by some 50 centimeters of snow falling in back-to-back snowstorms. And so it really made getting around the city challenging. It still is. I was out and about in the downtown core during my lunch break, and there's still mounds taller than I am. And there's barely anywhere to park either because one lane's being taken up by snow. You can imagine how much more difficult it then becomes for TTC commuters to get around. And so that's why a pair of councillors presented a motion today in hopes of improving snow response when it comes to the TTC in future years. Certainly this back-to-back snowstorm was not something that's typically seen here in the city. And it is something that councillors want to make sure can be addressed properly moving forward. I want to bring in Councillor Josh Matlow, actually, who brought this motion forward. Thanks so much for just running out.
My pleasure.
Tell me about what this effectively does now that your motion has passed.
I have a number of concerns about how the city's contracts don't meet the needs of Torontonians when it comes to effective winter service. And that needs to be reviewed and changed. When it comes to the TTC in particular, when we're all trying to get onto the streetcar and the bus, we've been finding mountains, icebergs of snow in front of us, not allowing us to get on. We want this to be prioritized. When it comes to drivers who think that leaving their cars in a route where a streetcar needs to get by is more important than the rest of us, a $200 fine is not cutting it. It's got to be raised, because if they're so selfish to just think about themselves, maybe they'll think about their wallet. And we also need to pay attention to what we call the open cuts of the subway that have received so much snow. And that has messed up the entire system over last weekend, as we all experienced. So that should be triaged and prioritized to make sure that we can keep the subway going when there is a big storm, because we are in Canada and we need to be prepared. Ultimately, the TTC needs to be ready. The sidewalks and the roads need to be cleared. And I believe the city and the TTC can do a lot better.
You mentioned we're in Canada. Are you surprised then that this wasn't already put in place to address this issue? We're in Toronto. We get snow, and lots of it sometimes.
You know, there were contracts that were approved by Mayor Tory and Council back in 2021, $1.5 billion contracts that I don't believe should have been approved. I actually was one of the very few who voted to send it back to committee because it came with very little information and very little detail. I don't think the penalties are strong enough. The performance standards are not being met, way too low. I don't believe that snowplows should just be shoving up snow, trapping cars, shoved right onto the sidewalk after all of us have tried to dig out. I don't believe that it's good enough. Unlike Montreal, they have dump trucks essentially that follow their plows to not just push the snow to the side, but they actually clear it. We should be doing more of that. We only have 140 of those trucks. We've got 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers of road in Toronto. Those go a kilometer per hour. We're not getting much done. So we've just got to get real. We've got to understand that we are a winter city. We're a Canadian city. Not every year. We don't have all these storms all the time, but we do often enough to make sure that we're prepared, because never mind being able-bodied and struggle to get through. I know, moms and dads who are pushing strollers out in a live lane of traffic when the sidewalk is a mountain high. But I've talked to people with disabilities who have literally been trapped in their homes all week because they haven't been able to safely get anywhere. I've talked to seniors with mobility challenges that will not go for a walk right now. They're in their homes. So I don't believe it's reasonable to complain about the snow being still there, maybe an hour or a day after it falls. But it's been like over a week, and I know that we can do better because other cities can do better. Montreal announced that they were able to do in 8 days what we've said we can do in 3 weeks.
Yeah, things happen slowly here, don't they, Councillor? Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. You've got a lot of the same questions, I think, that a lot of Torontonians have right now. Thank you for your time. Mayor Chow today also talked about the fact that she wants these snow contracts to be reviewed moving forward, because I think a lot of people in the city are upset that here we are a week later and there's still mountains, 5-6 feet high of snow all around the downtown core.
Okay.
Back to you guys.
Following the TTC discussion live at City Hall, CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. Thank you. And right now it's 5:13. This is Live at 5.
A registered massage therapist is facing a sexual assault charge. Police say the accused has been working in the GTA for more than 2 decades. We're going to check in with our crime analyst, Steve Ryan, right after this.
And the TTC board is meeting to discuss the transit agency's response to major snow events after back-to-back storms.
A registered massage therapist who's worked at clinics in the GTA for over 20 years has been charged with sexual assault.
And it's the final week of the Ontario election campaign. We are taking a look at the final polls and pitches.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. Welcome to Live at 5. Well, as the city continues to respond to the aftermath of back-to-back winter storms, the TTC board is set to discuss a motion on improving the transit agency's response to major snow events.
CP24's Beatrice Faisman joins us live with more. Not only residents concerned about this, a number of city councillors are frustrated too, Beatrice.
No question about it. I think every single city councillor here at City Hall, Lena and Bakari, are frustrated with the slow pace that snow removal is happening across the city. We've heard councillor after councillor talking about sidewalks still being impeded by snowbanks, people having a difficult time getting around, especially those with mobility issues, anyone who relies on a wheelchair, uses a walker, or parents walking with a stroller with small children as well. It's been really, really hard getting around the city. And same goes for those who rely on the TTC. And so that's why today, Councillor Josh Matlow brought forward a motion. It was seconded by TTC Chair Jamal Myers. And the goal of this motion was to essentially come up with a plan to to improve snow removal, specifically when it comes to the TTC. So what does this motion, which by the way was passed this afternoon, what does it do? Well, firstly, it's essentially asking city staff to go back to transportation staff and look at how they can expedite the process, get snow removed faster. Firstly, on outside portions of Line 1 and 2 subway, for example, Davisville Station, an outdoor station, snow and ice buildup on the tracks on top of the subway cars as well. So that's first priority. Second priority, accessibility in general across the city when it comes to TTC routes. And thirdly, working with the Ministry of Transportation and Toronto Police to do two things. One, increase fines for any drivers parking their vehicles that are impeding streetcars from getting around, and it's happening all around the city. And secondly, working with police to see if they can tow these vehicles, get them out of the way to keep transit moving. And so here's a bit of what we heard from the TTC chair, and then you'll hear Councillor Diane Sachs talking about just the challenges getting around the city right now with high snowbanks all around.
We had vehicles that were parked along streetcar routes that were illegally parked, and we had streetcars that were essentially stopped. They couldn't pass. And we had vehicles, just passenger vehicles, regular car vehicles that couldn't get through. So I thought that was surprising that we wouldn't have taken the proactive step to make sure that these routes were clear, because we knew the snow was coming and we knew that these vehicles were illegally parked. So that's not just a TTC problem, that's also a City of Toronto problem.
It's still very, very difficult to get around. It's impossible with a wheelchair or a stroller or a food cart. Yesterday, I was seeing somebody with a walker just could not get out of his home because of the snow. So absolutely, the snow is causing enormous problems. But it's not because anyone at the city is being bad or lazy or careless. It's that there isn't enough money, there isn't enough staff for the city to do it all, and I don't think the city should be trying to do it all. I think that was a mistake.
Mayor Chow today also expressing some frustration with the snail's pace of snow removal. I saw them yesterday just off of Queen and Niagara, getting those dump trucks in, getting the snow into the trucks to be taken to dump sites. It's taken a long time. And so she's talking about reviewing snow removal contracts moving forward as well, but incredibly frustrating for a lot of people here in the city. Back to you guys.
For sure. Beatrice, thank you for this. With the weather warming up now, though, the city says it's ready to respond to any flooding as the snow from recent storms starts to melt.
Officials say that snow removal operations across Toronto will help reduce the volume of melting snow that could contribute to potential flooding. And they say catch basins and areas prone to flooding will be inspected and cleared. Equipment and crews will also be ready at strategic locations. Toronto experienced 2 rounds of heavy snowfall this month. The last time the crews had this much snow to clear was back in January of 2022.
5:34, 6 degrees out there now. Let's get a check on that drive with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Abwa. Hey, Adj.
Hey, Lena. Yeah, it's getting busier and busier, and a lot of problems happening if you're making your way out. Still watching issues on the northbound lanes of the 410. This is right through Courtney Park. Still, the 2 right lanes are blocked to this collision, but it looks like most of the vehicles are getting cleared over to the side, so a sign they might start reopening lanes. And then on to the 401 if you're traveling eastbound. This is on the approach to Warden. Crews on scene of a collision now. It does appear they are blocking the 2 right lanes of the collectors. Headed towards the 400, southbound 400, just south of Shepherd. Left lane and shoulder blocked following a collision. And then on the 404, This is on the northbound side, right at the end of the on-ramp from Shepherd. It is the right lane blocked with the vehicle, which slid into the ditch, and emergency crews are off to the side. And if you're trying to use the Gardner westbound, at the end of the on-ramp from Spadina, right lane out with a stall, and even more issues. This is on the Toronto-bound lanes of the QEW. Stall off to the side. It was in the left lane. It looks like problems cleared over to the shoulder. Just a heads up, if you're headed towards Victoria Park, right at Lawrence, on city streets, crews on scene of a very serious collision involving a pedestrian. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, thanks a lot, Adge.
You're welcome.
Right now it's 5:36, holding at 6 above zero. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan will have the latest on a sex assault investigation involving a registered massage therapist in Durham region.
A registered massage therapist who's worked at clinics in the GTA for over 20 years has been charged with sexual assault.
Durham police have released a photo of 59-year-old Franklin Jimenez because they're concerned more people could be impacted by its investigation. Jimenez was arrested for allegedly sexually assaulting a patient in late January while working at a clinic near Wilson and Taunton in Oshawa. And for more on this, we're joined live in studio by our crime analyst, Steve Ryan. Steve, you've been following this really closely. This person has been in the field for over 20 years. So there's a real concern here. There could be more victims out there.
Yeah, that's right. But keeping in mind that these are just allegations right now, but they're very serious allegations. And the allegations have to do with this man working in his profession as a masseuse. So he had 20 years of working in that profession. Did he wake up on January the 27th? That's the day that the alleged sexual assault occurred, and decide that he was going to sexually assault somebody or other victims out there? And oftentimes a victim in a sexual assault of this nature might think that, oh, it's in my mind or it's minor and I'll just write it off as to a misunderstanding. But once they hear this investigation, this case, it may cause them to come forward now and provide information to the police.
See, we're talking about 20 years. Let's talk about this time period, the potential for more victims, and also the recollection of what happened.
Yeah, so the recollection is important, but if somebody's sexually assaulted, you would be amazed at how many of the details they can still recall decades later. But what's also important in a case like this is the job of the investigators to withhold specific information about this assault that occurred on January the 27th. Because if other people come forward, you want those victims to give their own recollection of their events, and you want to minimize the opportunity for a defense counsel to suggest to another victim, you're just repeating what the police said happened on January the 27th. So it's really key for investigators not to disclose any specific information about this alleged assault.
When police make a breakthrough in a case like this and they come out with a photo of the suspect and they have the allegations in front of everybody to see, does it encourage other alleged victims to come forward? Steve, what does that do?
Yeah, that's a great point. And it certainly does. And the police don't just release this information willy-nilly. If they must have some serious concerns about public safety, and this is why they went that extra step. You don't just release a person's picture for the sake of the media, let's say. You release a picture only when there is an investigative need to do so. So in this case, they believe that there may be other victims. Have a look at this guy's picture. If you had a massage
and
from
in your
this
experience,
guy,
that encourages other people to come forward?
It does. It does, because it really does psychologically really say to a victim that I will be believed, and that what I felt was legitimate. And that's important for sexual assault victims.
And along with that, what's the message here to other potential victims out there who may be reticent to come forward?
You'll be believed. The police will believe what you have to tell them. Now, they'll have to work to corroborate the information that you are providing, but they will never say to you, you are lying, we don't believe you. They'll take your statement, and then they'll work around your information and try to get other confirming evidence to support the allegation.
Okay, Steve Ryan, live in studio for us tonight. Thank you for this, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Right now it's 5:41, holding at 6 above zero. This is Live at 5.
Party leaders are making their final rounds trying to secure your vote ahead of Thursday's provincial election. We're going to have the latest, including what the latest polls are suggesting.
It's the final days of the provincial election campaign, and all party leaders continue to stomp for votes in the lead up to Election Day.
CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us live with the very latest on these final pitches. Melissa.
Yeah, that's right. The closing messages right now, Lena and Bakari, coming from the candidates. For anyone who's kind of been sitting out this election campaign, now's the time to pay attention because the real meaty stuff is being put on offer for you. A lot of promises, a lot of finger pointing going on right now in this last stretch until Election Day on Thursday. We heard from Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives today. They outlined their platform, including things like $5 billion for a Protect Ontario account. That's aimed at helping to respond to those American tariffs that are now looking more likely than ever before. Also promising some $50 million to support modular housing, about $700 million to expand STEM and skilled trades training. The platform, though, important to mention that it does not include a full costing breakdown of everything. And there are also not price tags attached to some major promises like that tunnel underneath the 401. So we heard from Ford today when he was speaking at FTI Trade School and Training Center this morning. Here's some of what he had to say.
Today, we're released our plan to protect Ontario. It's a plan that will protect Ontario workers with immediate supports for the people hit hardest by whatever tariffs President Trump imposes, and significant new investments to train and retrain workers for in-demand jobs in the skilled trades. Our plan to protect Ontario will build our economy, diversify our trade, and make our province the most competitive place in the G7 to invest.
Now, the gloves are really starting to come off now. We heard from Mart Stiles today. She was making her way through southwestern Ontario, taking jabs at the Liberals. Here's some of what she had to say.
The Liberals are trying to convince people that they're a better option, that New Democrats should vote for Liberals. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The party that brought us hallway healthcare. Right? A leader who to this day is taking donations from private healthcare insiders and greenbelt developers. We will not accept that. We will not settle. We will vote for our values and what we believe in, and we will vote for real change in the province of Ontario.
It's been fascinating to watch the focus right now for some of the candidates as well. We heard from Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie in Ottawa saying if you want a family doctor, vote for the Liberals, making that very clear. That is her platform. Also hearing from the Green Party leader Mike Schreiner today in Bracebridge. He says Doug Ford making promises to build a mega spa to get that tunnel underneath the 401. He's making an appeal to rural voters, saying people in places like Bracebridge, they just want roads, they want those potholes filled, they want the basics taken care of. Back to you.
Okay, this is crunch time for the candidates. Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks.
Well, the Daily Nanos research poll for CTV News shows the Ontario PCs continuing to maintain their lead over the Liberals.
The Progressive Conservatives have 44% support, followed by the Liberals at 29%. The Ontario NDP sits third with 19.8% support, while the Greens are at 4.8%.
And the contenders for the federal Liberal leadership will meet in Montreal tonight for the party's French language debate. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is seen as the apparent frontrunner, but he's new to federal politics, and his French debating skills will be under scrutiny. Former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is an experienced debater who'll be looking to make up ground in the race. Former Government House Leader Karina Gould and former MP Frank Baylis will round out the four participants who will hit the stage to make their pitches.
Well, some Google Map users in Canada are claiming that provincial parks have been labeled as state parks.
Mount Robson Park, a Whaleboat Island Marine Provincial Park, and Pinecone Burke Provincial Park are just some that have been relabeled, according to screenshots shared by users. It comes amid recent threats from U.S. President Donald Trump to make Canada its 51st state.
Okay, and for more on this, we are joined by tech analyst Carmi Levy. Carmi, Good evening. How are you doing? Okay, I had to take a minute here because, look, we've seen what's happening online with the labeling of the Gulf of Mexico versus the Gulf of America. So how is it that Canadian provincial parks are showing up as state parks?
Well, this is a little bit different than the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America debacle, which actually involved Google Maps changing the name of the place for American users. Of course, here in Canada, it still shows up as Gulf of Mexico. Here in Canada, for those provincial parks, the names of the provincial parks still say provincial park. But if you look below it in those screen grabs that you shared before, it actually shows state park. And the reason being is Google has now confirmed they don't differentiate between state parks and provincial parks in the way they categorize their data. That has always been the way it was. Google Maps, of course, has gone through a number of iterations over the years. They sort of changed the back end here and there. And if we had looked at Google Maps a couple of months ago, we would have noticed in the margins it would have said state park. But of course, we weren't as hopped up politically back then. The Gulf of Mexico issue in the U.S. suddenly made everybody pay really close attention. And now they're zeroing in on something that isn't as much of a crisis as a lot of people think it is.
Okay, is there anything that Google can do here to respond to some of the reaction, Carmi?
Yeah, Google has said that it is working hard to address the problem. In other words, it's looking at the way that it categorizes the data. And up until now, it used one category, state park, to reference both state and provincial parks. It figured if the government manages this public land, then that's just what we're going to call it. They recognize now that that was probably not the best idea. And so their engineers are probably going to tweak the way the data is displayed so that in future, when you look at a provincial park in Canada, that category shows up as provincial park and doesn't cause us to maybe, have our heart skip a beat or two.
Okay, Carmi, what effect does this have on other apps like Apple Maps or even Waze?
It's interesting because Apple Maps, of course, very soon after Google changed the Gulf of Mexico for American users to the Gulf of America, Apple followed suit. And it's certainly something to watch for, especially because while Apple is a separate and distinct company and probably has a very different back end to its Apple Map product, Waze is also owned by the same company that owns Google, Alphabet, and they used, in some cases, similar technologies to run the services. And so you would expect Apple is probably also calling up its engineers and saying, hey, let's look at this stuff, make sure that the back end of these systems, the way we engineer them, the way we build the data in, doesn't cause confusion as it clearly has here.
Any lessons to learn here, Carmi?
Yeah, I think, first of all, let's not jump to conclusions. Google was not making a political statement here. Right. This is just the way it's always been. And so, I think we should skip a beat, allow companies like Google and Apple to explain exactly how this stuff works. And in many cases, it's just the way the technology works.
All right, tech analyst Carmi Levy. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Carmi.
Thanks, guys.
It's 5:52, 6 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
Border town residents are gifted a free breakfast from their American neighbors. We're going to explain why next. A free breakfast for a few dozen people in Windsor, apparently as an apology from an American couple over the ongoing tensions between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah, it happened on Saturday morning inside Toast. The restaurant says the couple from Ann Arbor, Michigan, paid the bills for everyone inside to show their appreciation for Canada and for winning the Four Nations face-off over the U.S. For more on this nice gesture, we're joined live by May Hermes, co-owner of Toast Restaurant. May, thank you for joining us. What a great story. Take us back to that day. What happened?
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, it was Saturday, I want to say afternoon at about 1 p.m. We had a lovely couple come in. They sat down, ordered, and upon ordering, they told me that they're from America and they're from Ann Arbor specifically, and they wanted to pay for everyone's bill that day. And I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yes, this is just to show our appreciation and our love for Canadian people. And we love Canada. We don't agree with what's going on here. And we don't agree with what Donald Trump is doing to you guys. So we just wanted to show our appreciation to a small local business. And we decided to come here and we wanted to pay for everyone's meals today.
So May, I have to ask, what are the lessons in brotherly love and diplomacy here?
Oh, of course. I mean, like so many lessons. I mean, these are two genuine people. They didn't do it for like social media. They weren't doing it for publicity. We didn't even film them. They just did it from like the love of their hearts and for loving us Canadians and showing appreciation to our win the other night with hockey and to just how much they actually do love Canadian people and crossing the border. I mean, we get American people all the time that come and support us, and we're proud to have American neighbors that support us. So I feel like they are just genuine people who wanted to do good for local businesses in Canada.
Yeah, what a wonderful act of kindness. What was the reaction like in the restaurant when they said they were going to do this? How did the Canadians respond?
Yeah, so she ended up speaking to everybody, told everybody that she was going to pay their bill. And at the time, there was about, I want to say 60, 70 people. So it was a packed house. So she told everyone that she was going to pay their bill. And she told everybody why, because she does love Canadians. And she's so happy that we won the hockey game and that she doesn't agree with what Trump is doing to us. So everyone started to applaud her. They went and thanked them. They gave them hugs. They just couldn't believe it. I mean, at the time, there was a lot of younger students, and then there was the older generation, and then there was mothers who had kids. So it was like a very wide variety of people, and I feel like they really, really did appreciate that.
Okay, May, I have to ask, did you cry?
You know what? I was so busy. We were so busy that day. So I went home and I took it all in with my kids. And I'm like, it's just so remarkable to see that there is actually genuine people still out there, and that we can come together and show peace and love like they did. So it was very heartwarming, that's for sure.
You know, the tensions have been high, obviously, and you know that living in Windsor. And, you know, we've seen Americans booing Canadians, Canadians booing Americans. Did this sort of restore your faith in that friendship that we've shared with our American counterparts for so long?
Definitely. I feel like the news and everything that's going on is just trying to divide us. And we have so many Americans that come into the restaurant, and especially lately, and they've been like, we want to support you. We love Canada. We love you, Canadians. We're so sorry what's happening to you guys. So I do feel like faith in humanity can be restored. We can go back to having peace, and the tariffs and everything going on, it doesn't have to divide us.
All right, faith in humanity can be restored. May Hermes, co-owner of Toast Restaurant. Hey, thank you for taking time to share this wonderful story with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, May. You've been watching Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.